Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we're going to be talking about the process of being diagnosed and my experiences with the process of, you know, going to the doctors, going to speak to an ADHD specialist. That we're just going to be talking about that experience, what made me kind of go to the doctors in the first place. So before we start, if you could smash me a big thumbs up down below and subscribe to my YouTube channel, I would really appreciate that. But let's get on to the video. So as many of you know, I wasn't diagnosed until 21 years old. So my parents were always very aware that my behaviour may not be normal, or that I could lose my rag a little bit quickly than the other children. So they became aware that, you know, the authority figures, they weren't much of like a scare to me. I wasn't bothered by them, I wasn't intimidated. I kind of liked to challenge their authority. I like to be like, well, I can do what I want. I liked to just challenge that. So they definitely knew that my behaviour wasn't quite right. So all through like secondary school, infant school, primary school, if you look at my report cards and you go back to the very beginning, they all kind of mention, you know, Molly can't stop talking in class. Molly won't pay attention in class. Molly's always disrupting me. Molly is always doing her own thing. She's not listening. She isn't very social with the rest of the people in her class. You know, it was very much the same every year at school, every different school I went to. It was very much the same, like Molly can't sit still, Molly won't take no for an answer, Molly this, Molly that. You know, it was very apparent that there was something not quite right with my behaviour. To me, obviously, I knew there wasn't something quite right, and I always did feel the odd one out, like all the time. I never like fit into any social norms, you know. I didn't ever reach the milestones that other people in my classes were meeting. You know, academically I wasn't great. I hated being in groups, I hated assembly.
And people used to be like, just go sit in assembly, what's the big deal?
To me it was a huge deal, and little things like that I look back at now and I think, there we go. You know, that's where my ADHD was just struggling. I was struggling with like the whole concept of sitting in assembly, like a room full of people, and I'm not interested in anything they say, so I just didn't want to do it. I just couldn't make myself sit in an assembly. And it's things like that that I look back now and I just feel sorry for myself, because I was screaming out for help, you know, I was struggling, and nobody knew, no one understood why. So I was always the child that was never invited places. I never got like loads of Christmas cards. I was never like the one for having many friends. I still am like that now. I don't have even one friend. And you know, I used to care so much about that and worry about that, but now I know why I am kind of different, and I see the world differently. It doesn't affect me and bother me as much as it did do. So even though my parents knew, you know, that I wasn't exactly well behaved, and my anxiety and, you know, my home life with my parents and my sibling, it wasn't great, and the relationships at home were falling apart. You know, they were holding on by the thinnest thread. So a lot of people just thought that my parents weren't disciplining me enough, or, you know, that they were just spoiling me, letting me get away with things. But that wasn't the case. When I was at home, I was punished like a child without ADHD. I was punished, and, you know, I knew the consequences, but it didn't have an effect on me. I didn't care for consequences. I wanted to challenge these consequences, and in my mind it was like, if I don't want to do that, why the hell do I have to do it? In my mind it was plain and simple like that. Like, why are you making me do something I don't want to do? And it got tougher as I got older, because obviously I got stronger, I got more like violent, and things just got worse. My vocabulary became very funky, let's just say funky, and things just started to spiral. In school, in secondary school, I was excluded. I wasn't allowed on school trips. If you want to know more about like that in my school life, there are videos which I will link in the iCard. But yeah, I've spoken about my school life. It was not great. I'm just gonna cut a long story short. I was like put into a pupil referral unit because it was just out of control. I was only allowed in school part-time, and that was only because I was year 11 when it got really, really bad, and they couldn't kick me out because I was gonna be sitting my GCSEs. So even through year 11, I didn't care about GCSEs. That wasn't an issue for me. I didn't care. I wanted to be in the police, and it was like, I know I'm gonna get there. Like, I was cocky. I didn't care what anyone else kind of thought of me. If I wanted to do something, I was gonna do it. I didn't care about the consequences. I didn't care who I hurt who I hurt on my way to doing what I want to do. It was just a very difficult and hard time for everyone that was involved in my life. So anyway, like I say, I don't want to be dragging this too long on, but when I went to college, you know, my parents were like, this is going to be the making of you, you know, it's going to be a lot better, there's not as many strict rules, you know, blah 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 blah. Again, I was still undiagnosed at this point. We did not know what was going to hit us. We did not know. So basically all throughout college, I was there three years, 3 years, and the first year I went to college, I was excluded. I was put into a separate room because they just couldn't handle my behaviour. I had an attitude problem and things were just spiraling. So basically I had to be like moved to a separate room. I went in on my own, done my work and went home because they just didn't want me to be mixing around with people, because they were just like, you're too immature, we can't handle your behaviour at college. Like, if you don't want to be here, don't come. Like, it's that simple. So basically the second year was exactly the same. My attendance was like, I think it was like 42%, and they were like, don't even bother coming, like you're messing your future up, you're wasting our time. And basically I just did what I wanted to do, left when I wanted to, and I done photography, and that was like my favourite subject. I love photography, and it was just like, why can I not still do, why can I just not still behave like a normal person when I'm like 17? It should have stopped. I'm not at school. Why am I still acting like an idiot? Like, why? So at this point, I started to realise that there was something not quite right with myself. And I had started to drive. I had just passed my driving test. And let's just say from that point, my parents hated letting me out the house because where I had a car, I was not coming in till late. I was like, they had a curfew, I didn't bother listening to them. I'd go out with anybody, like drive people anywhere, and you know, basically I just was speeding. My black box was sending my parents like messages, and it wasn't good. So I, at the age of 19, I had to give up my driving license voluntarily because I was just a danger to myself and other innocent people. Like, it wasn't even, it was just bad basically. Right, so this bit here might be a little bit confusing, but it's the most kind of dominant part of this process, so just bear with me. Like I say, my mum and dad always knew there was something not quite right with me, and I wanted to be a policewoman. So I left school 6 years ago, so you've got to remember 6 years ago, ADHD, and especially females with ADHD, weren't as kind of well known. They weren't spoken, it wasn't spoken about like boys with ADHD. It wasn't spoken about like that. You know, girls were like, no, girls don't have ADHD, it's just a boy thing. That was how it felt. You know, I knew no girls at my school that ever had ADHD. I knew no girls at college that had ADHD. So, you know, I wasn't even aware that girls could have ADHD at this point. But my parents didn't. They were always told throughout every like school that I went to, you know, you should get her tested for autism or ADHD, you know, her behaviour isn't right, you know. But my parents decided, no, we don't want to label our child. Like, they were hoping I would grow out with it.
Boy, were they wrong. They were so wrong.
So basically, like I said, they didn't want to get me diagnosed because they knew that I wanted to go in the police, in the navy, in the military. Like, I wanted to be in that type of career. And like I say, ADHD wasn't well understood at that point. So they thought, no, if we get her labelled, that could impact her future, that could ruin her job prospects. Like, they might not take it in the police. And you know, I was adamant that I was going in the police. Like, that is still to this day my dream job. But you know, at that point we didn't know I had ADHD. So you know, my parents were like, no, we will work through it, we will help her improve her behaviour. Yeah, so that's why we never really got any educational like psychiatrists in. I never got evaluated basically. So I was just classed as a naughty child, like a spoiled child. My parents weren't good parents. They were just letting me get away with stuff. I was uncontrollable. And that was how I was looked at, because I didn't have a diagnosis. I didn't even have like any evaluation that took place. So the last year of college is, like I say, this is the dominant part, along with like my parents' side of the story, like didn't get me diagnosed. So the last year of college, It was bad. I was kicked out of college completely at this point. I was doing public service. I was going to go in the police force. That was what I wanted to do, you know. And throughout the whole course, at the very beginning, I was pulled aside and the teacher said to me,
I've been made aware of your, let's just say, lack of discipline. I can't have that, he said to me. I can't have that type of behaviour on my course. I just don't stand for it.
And that kind of set me back a bit. I was thinking, how dare you say that to me? He gave me like a negative feeling towards this tutor, and throughout like the first few weeks, yeah, okay, my behaviour was okay, because I was like obviously trying to settle in. I was trying to figure out like who's the weaker one, who's the more dominant teacher here, like who you know, who can I wind up the most? So I'm not going to carry on with this video much longer because it's going to be a long video, and there is going to be a second part to this video.